Hi, I'm Eric from Alpha Power Solutions, and I'm here today to talk to you about the imminent tariff increases that are going to be implemented in South Africa. Well, that statement is actually true for most businesses, except for some of the very large businesses that have negotiated or in the process of negotiating much cheaper tariffs with NERSA and Eskom. Overall, the vast majority of the businesses in South Africa have actually no control whatsoever about the tariff increases themselves. But they have control over their power usage. The key is to identify wasted energy. That means air leaks, equipment being, air leaks from compressed air systems, equipment left on when they're not in use during weekends or during lunchtime, geysers that are not controlled with timers, heaters, air conditioning systems, lights, etc. left on when there is no need for them to be running. So a lot of these are very much common sense and extremely cheap to implement. Maybe not as easy to implement because sometimes it requires attitude changes from the personnel, but they are rather cheap to implement. They also have control, most businesses have control over their network access charges and demand charge. Basically, they can control when and what equipment is switched on to minimize the maximum power usage used by a business during a typical 30-minute window. That takes a little bit of planning. That takes probably the requirement of changing safe working procedures. But there is great opportunity to manage what equipment is used when. With a bit of planning, this can be having a big impact on the total electricity. The third thing that some businesses need to do, especially the relatively small businesses, they should investigate if they don't qualify for a cheaper tariff. So each municipality and Eskom have many different tariffs, and they can have a significant impact on the total electricity. If you use less power, you could qualify for one of the cheaper tariffs. So what the municipalities and Eskom are trying to do is they want to bill the larger businesses the biggest portion of all the electricity being consumed in the country, or tariff them at a much higher rate, so that the smaller businesses and the residential users do not pay such a high tariff. So basically, the bigger businesses subsidize power usage of the smaller businesses and residential users. NERSA approved, beginning of the month, significant tariff increases for Eskom and for municipality, significantly higher than the inflation rate. So Eskom will implement, or is allowed to implement, an increase of 8.76%, and that will come into effect on the 1st of April. So that's going to affect a lot of businesses. Also, NERSA approved an tariff increase of 9.01% for all the municipalities, but that increase only comes into effect on the 1st of July 2026. So the effect of these tariff increases is not yet known for sure. So especially municipalities optimize their revenue by not applying the approved tariff increase, which is basically an average tariff increase, not a weighted tariff increase. So they do not apply the increases equally across the multiple billing items on an electricity bill. So what they'll tend to do is increase the items which represent a bigger portion of the electricity bill. They will increase them typically much higher than, for example, a cheaper or less expensive billing item, which would typically be, say, for example, a service charge. That is usually a very small portion of the total bill. So what they'll do is they'll increase the service charge very little, but they'll apply a much bigger tariff increase on the high-ticket items. So it's not really known upfront what the total effect of the approved tariff increases will have on the electricity bill of the businesses. The additional problem is that because of the incompetence within the municipalities, they don't really publish the official tariffs till very, very late. Usually after the actual implementation date, which is the 1st of July. So it's only really in August that we start to see the real impact of the increases that have been implemented by the municipality. If businesses do not invest in renewable energy and storage systems, their electricity costs will rise by the compounded tariff increases year after year. So for example, the tariff increases that have been approved for this year will then be compounded by the tariff increases for next year. And from what we know now, it looks like electricity will increase by approximately 18%, almost 19% by the end of next year. So, it's just spiraling completely out of it. So, with this process, the investments in renewable energy and in storage, and those costs keep reducing and keep falling, they will start to compete more and more against power supplied by municipalities and by ESCOM. So they're basically in some sort of an inevitable death spiral unless something gets done about it. The electricity costs are just completely out of control in this country. So the solution is to find alternative sources for electricity supply and also to avoid wastage. The addressing wastage or minimizing waste typically costs far less than implementation of alternative energy and storage. So the first thing businesses should do is identify all the waste, all the electrical waste or the wasted energy, just by optimizing the processes. It's usually extremely low return on investments, these types of interventions. So another possibility that we see some of our customers do is, if it's financially viable and practical, they actually relocate their operations to an area which is supplied directly by ESCOM. It must be noted that ESCOM's tariff is relatively cheap compared to what the municipalities charge. If it's feasible, the company should look for areas that are serviced directly by ESCOM. Some of these areas are still within the biggest cities, but they are pockets. So you need to be looking carefully in which areas ESCOM supplies that. Usually it's in the proximity of very large business or mines or smelters. So these areas tend to be supplied directly by ESCOM, and obviously rural areas, because the municipalities don't want to incur those costs, because that's usually not very profitable for ESCOM to supply in remote areas. Obviously, if you're gonna go into rural areas, your transport costs will increase. So it requires a detailed analysis of what's, the viability of these relocations. But known now, 3 businesses have done so, and the return on investment for the relocation and all the costs involved with moving a business into a different area, the return on investments, they inform me, were between 24 and 36 months. So it's definitely worth looking into. Most businesses have opportunities to reduce the amount of wasted electricity in their operations. We see it each time we go to a specific business. We see plenty of opportunities to reduce energy that is actually being drawn from the grid and used, but actually not applied correctly. Most of these low-cost interventions are basically based on common sense and then very easy to implement at a minimal cost, except in cases where employees might resist the changes that are required. The implementation of those changes, especially if it involves attitude changes from personnel, need to be properly communicated and explained so that everyone sees the benefit. So I'm typically thinking of leaving air cons, lights, geysers, compressors, etc. on when they're not required or not needed. The other thing that we notice is that some businesses still don't have power factor correction equipment, or they don't have their equipment serviced and repaired. There's also the opportunity to reduce electricity by replacing antiquated floodlights, which are power guzzlers, with LED floodlights. Rewinding of electrical motors more than once typically means that motor will consume much more energy than it should. A lot of that extra energy will just be heat that the motor will be emitting. And then one of the biggest things really is, not metering and monitoring their power usage. I find it quite amazing that, a lot of businesses have electricity in their top 5 operating expenses, yet hardly any effort is done to contain those costs. So businesses typically spend a lot of time on raw materials, employee costs, including overtime. All these items are typically well managed and well scrutinized to optimize or minimize costs. But the electricity is one of those that just, the bill comes and the finance department just pays the bill, typically because they're scared to be cut off. But no one really analyzes what's going on. And if you don't have data, you can't manage it, right? So first step would be to install metering. Typically, the easiest form of metering would be the one where the data of key points is stored on cloud somewhere, so it's accessible all the time, and that somebody is made responsible to analyze the amount of power that's consumed every day by preferably looking at the half-hour windows, and to try to figure out why there is peaks and troughs in the power usage, and the peaks should be minimized as much as possible because they will affect approximately 50% of the electricity. So it's not complicated to do this. If you see that, for example, on weekends when there should be, and there is no production taking place. So in theory, you should only have some power usage on floodlighting, maybe, some power usage by the security employees, kettles and stuff that they need. Maybe some power for UPSs, for servers, but the power should be really, really minimal in these circumstances. And if they're abnormally high, then an investigation should be conducted on where this wasted energy can be eliminated. Basically, a power factor correction typically has an impact on about 50% of the total electricity bill. And depending on the type of industry the businesses are in, the power factor correction equipment can reduce the overall bill by approximately 20%. So we typically see any viable power factor correction system have an impact of between 5 and 20% of the total electricity bill. So that will depend on a number of factors, such as the tariff they're on, the type of industry they're in, that range that we can see, and the return on investment of these types of interventions is extremely short. It's typically 12 months. The first thing that businesses should do is implement online metering solutions to give visibility of their power usage. They should also carry out an energy audit of the facility by a reputable company that will help them identify where energy is wasted. The implementation of the various solutions that will be tabled after these audits, they should be prioritized based on the biggest impact they have, obviously, and those interventions that have the most favorable return on investment. So it's just, there will be, if an energy audit is conducted, there will be lots of ideas or recommendations to reduce the power usage, but not all of them will have the same impact on the reduction of the power usage. Some of them will be relatively small reductions, others will be big, with requiring very large investments. So once all the recommendations are tabled and known in terms of costing and the potential savings, then these recommendations should be prioritized and implemented. Well, thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. There's a blog with more info linked in the description below. So if your business is losing money on hidden electricity costs, take our quick 3-minute assessment to find out. The link is also in the description below.